We went on the vacation of a lifetime, and it was all planned by AI. But let's rewind. In case you missed the last 2 episodes of our new AI Planned It series, we've cut through the jargon, using simple AI tools to choose, plan and book a vacation. And it led us here to sunny Madeira, Portugal. During our trip, we're going to be putting 3 of the best AI phones head-to-head: the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, Pixel 9 Pro and the iPhone 16 Pro. The question is, are these new AI tools as useful abroad as we hope they will be? I'm joined once again by Axel, Hamish, and of course, then there's me. So let's see what our AI-powered trip to Madeira has in store. So we have finally made it, guys. We are here in Madeira. Weather's not quite what it was promised, but we're really excited to try 3 of the best AI phones available today.
Yeah, so I have got the trusty iPhone 16 Pro, complete with Apple Intelligence in its fullest form at the time of recording. So we know that Apple is supposedly going to bring out Siri 2.0, whatever that may mean, either this year or next. But all the Apple Intelligence features that you can get right now are on this phone, so Siri and ChatGPT integration. And we've also got Visual Intelligence, which is Apple's version of Google Lens, essentially. So it can translate things for you, it can tell you what you're looking at through the viewfinder, that sort of thing. And then obviously Cleanup, Genmoji, writing tools, and yeah, I'm looking forward to trying them out.
And Hamish, tell us about your phone.
Yep, I'm going to be using this lovely pink Google Pixel 9 Pro, and it has full-on Gemini. Every Gemini feature that's currently available is on this phone. That's things like Live, so I can have a conversation with the AI. I can also upload photos and files to sort of inform our conversations. It's things like Circle to Search, so I can highlight and search for things on the phone screen. Google Lens and versions of it, so I can take pictures and find out more information. And also all of Google's camera features, including things like Magic Eraser and Add Me, which I'm sure will be very handy later on this trip. Everything Gemini, that's what I'll be running on.
Everything Gemini.
Everything Gemini. Gemini all the way
I'm going
down.
to grow a second me.
And I have the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra. This is the weird love child of Android and Samsung's own AI. So you've got Gemini and Bixby in here. It's a little bit confusing sometimes to tell which is which, and sometimes they double up on each other, but I'm going to be trying as much as possible to use the Bixby and Samsung features for the duration of this trip. We were at the airport and we saw the infamous Cristiano Ronaldo statue that is there.
We went looking for the cursed version. We found something that wasn't the cursed version, but there is a bust of Cristiano Ronaldo outside the Cristiano Ronaldo airport.
Which is pretty cool. And we all tried a couple of tests. So we tried doing Circle to Search, all the various different versions of that across phones.
And they all kind of did about the same, didn't they? They went, yep, this is the statue of Leonardo
DiCaprio.
Hamish doesn't watch football.
Neither do I. We're off to a great start.
But then we also did a camera test.
Yes.
Vicky, our wonderful social media editor, put her hand in front of Ronaldo's eyes, and we had to see how well sort of Magic Eraser / generative fill / whatever it's called on your platform of choice, how well it could remove her arm and then replace Cristiano Ronaldo's face.
And the answer for these two was not very well. However, the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra actually managed to replace Cristiano Ronaldo's eyes with different eyes. It didn't look exactly the same as the original statue.
But if you didn't know what the original statue was, it's done really, really well, this Samsung.
I'll say in defense of Google, it did like correctly remove the arm. It just sort of reimagined the statue as if it had never had eyes.
Yeah.
So it had sort of correctly redrawn the face, just eyeless, which was, you know, not terrible, but definitely not as impressive as the Samsung approach.
Yeah, and I'll just say that Cleanup was the worst of the 3. This is what we've seen so far. But in fairness, it works best when it's able to pre-highlight things for selection for you.
Yeah.
That's when you know that you're going to get a good result. With this, as you'll see on the screen, it didn't really do that. You kind of had to draw over it and hope that it would identify a hand and remove it. I think the bottom line is that all 3 of these phones either do exactly the same things with different names or slightly different versions of those things.
Even though I'm normally a Samsung user, I do really like Google Pixels, and I kind of want the Pixel to win because also it's my phone for this trip. And I want to win. I'm very competitive. But I think having Gemini and a little bit of Samsung on top is really going to help Samsung in this sort of AI race that we've got going on.
Our first full day in Madeira was planned by TripAdvisor's AI travel agent, taking us on a sea kayaking adventure featuring cliff jumping, pirate ships, and a dislocated shoulder.
I dislocated my shoulder.
But it wasn't quite the right environment for conversation, so we went to TripAdvisor's lunch spot recommendation, Ristorante de Forte, to try out each of the phone's different translation tools. So we are sitting down for lunch and we're about to try some live translation tasks. We're following TripAdvisor's itinerary today, so we've already been sea kayaking this morning. How was that, guys?
It was fantastic. I really liked it.
Good. Bit hard on the shoulders, but a good workout.
We've actually tried one of the tasks already, which was ordering our food using live translation through the cameras. How did you guys find that? Because mine did not do very well. Samsung struggled a little bit to A, identify which Portuguese the menu was in, and B, accurately tell me what on earth was in my meal. How about you guys?
So I had a really good time with Google Lens because not only could it translate the text for me fairly accurately from what I could tell, but also then I could highlight the text and it would instantly search that. So it's like, okay, you know, for me it was things like gnocchi and risotto, which I already know what that is. But if I wasn't 100% sure, I could just sort of pull up and see, okay, what's Milanese risotto specifically? And it told me all about it through Google.
Very useful.
Yeah, so on iPhone, you've actually got 3 ways to do it. So you can take a picture and it will give you translate options in the Gallery app. You can go into the Apple Translate app itself and choose a camera option and translate. But the quickest way, if you have an iPhone 16, is to do, again, the camera control feature straight into visual intelligence. Take a picture, tap translate, and as far as I can tell, it translated it pretty well.
Now you might be wondering who this lovely guest with us is here. This is our guide for the trip. His name is Ricardo. We're going to set up our live translators and you're going to speak to us in Portuguese and we're going to see if it correctly understands what you're saying. Everyone, on the count of 3, start recording. 1, 2, 3. So Ricardo, tell me why you think it is that some of these translator apps might struggle a bit more with Portuguese versus other languages.
Eu penso que o facto de português europeu ser português que não alcança tantas pessoas, no fundo é a razão pela qual não existe tanto conteúdo digital acerca do nosso português. Continuamos a ser uma língua grande num país pequeno e isso faz com que, de certa forma, toda a tecnologia que existe à volta do português esteja mais ligada ao Brasil, por exemplo.
Awesome, thank you so much.
This one did actually really good. Also because I wanted to, you know, sound as simple as I could. Obviously, as we mentioned before, when you speak your native language, you might just go to like idiomatic expressions and stuff like that. So in a way, that's the only con I see. It didn't make any mistake as far as I know. It didn't pick everything, like every little word I said, because I think also my language or Portuguese language is, you know, difficult to listen to sometimes. There's little nuance that it's hard to get. I would say like this is a 95% picked up and it's all correct. Like it took all my words, but it's literally translating.
Yeah.
So, because the structure of the language is different. It's not that bad, it's getting better, I would say. But there's still a big way to go.
So, mixed for Samsung, quite good, but mixed.
Yeah.
Should we try Gemini next? So put your phone in front.
I think this is doing really bad, actually.
Google, the king of translate at one time.
Yeah, this is through the Google Translate app.
Honestly, it was not made for long conversations. It's just some sort of like easy gadget that you just go around and go like, what is this bread? And this is butter.
And also, you might have seen in the video, I basically have to keep tapping it every so often because whenever Ricardo put a pause in, it would just sort of stop translating him.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not very helpful when you're trying to have a longer chat with someone.
And then Axel.
Well, I mean, look, that's the translation we've got there, which basically means
Nothing.
nothing. Microphone doesn't work, doesn't pick it up. So I think this is Apple's own Translate app. To be clear, that first conversation we had, it just didn't pick any of it up because it's a lot of manual stopping, starting.
Sure,
you know, I have to jump in and stop. You have to jump in and stop when you speak, which isn't a very natural conversation thing to do. Even though this is a conversation mode, I mean, it's really kind of unusable in its current state, at least compared to the Samsung, which looked like it was able to differentiate between stops and start.
Yeah.
Which is the AI part of these tools, right? Like, we've had Translate apps for a long time. You know, we've been able to do this and this for a while. It might be better than it has ever been now, but the conversation part is where the AI comes in, because it's the AI recognizing that it's a conversation in the first place.
Yes. For the rest of our lunch break, we tried out a few more visual intelligence and Gemini Live tricks to see if we could do things like identifying the food on our plates, before we then head to the beach to catch some more footage for our trip.
The only problem is, it's a bit loud.
So to make sure we can keep those cameras rolling, we're going to try out some AI background noise removal on our phones. We filmed the exact same clip of our guide Ricardo chatting with Axel in the ocean on each of the 3 phones. But amidst all of the noise and action,
Ow! A rock just landed on my foot!
Oh, yeah.
We decided it'd be best to head back to our Airbnb to review the day's AI tasks.
Let's quickly recap on some of the stuff we talked about at lunch with Ricardo. So we used those live translation tools. We had a little bit more playing around with them afterwards. What's everyone's verdict on how they performed?
I used Apple's in-house translation app, which hasn't really been AI-ified yet. It's not really part of Apple Intelligence. It's kind of what's existed for a while. So what that means is essentially the translate function is really good, and when I gave Ricardo some one-on-one questions, he said the translations were actually really accurate. But the conversation tool is just not really usable in a kind of real-time sense. Like, it's very manual. You have to pause when I finish speaking, he has to pause when he finishes speaking. You know, the phone can't really identify when you stop and start naturally, which I think limits its ability as a sort of genuine conversation, you know, enhancer. But as a translate tool, it works just fine, but I don't think it's an AI tool just yet.
Not quite. What about you, Hamish?
So for me, it was almost the reverse, because when we did the initial test with him, I kept having to restart it, like with Apple and all of these other things on Google Translate, the app that I thought would be the best, because Google Translate is almost synonymous with translation tech.
The goat of translation.
Exactly. Then when I realized that, okay, there's actually a button where I can set it up so Ricardo can read the language from his end and I can read it from my language from my end. It's sort of mirrored. It was going pretty much live translation, spitting out English to me and Portuguese to Ricardo. He then said it was 100 times better.
Yeah.
And so I think, having initially been really disappointed, it seems like it's more one of those tools where before you get into a situation you want to use it in, you maybe want to have a bit more of a play around with it.
Yeah, I think Samsung was pretty much fine from the get-go. I think that's their strength there isn't necessarily that the translation's that much better, but the UI makes it really, really easy. Like, it's in the hot menu on the settings of page so that you can quickly just hop into Interpreter at any point. That makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I think Samsung won that hands down. Even if sometimes the translation weren't maybe super accurate.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't inaccurate, but you know, like certain idioms and phrases.
You got the gist of it.
It was just so seamless.
Yeah.
Like, he would stop talking and it would know instantly and not stop the conversation. Like real time. It's real time AI.
With our final translation winner decided, it was time to check out the phone's audio removal smarts. First up, here's the iPhone 16 Pro.
So Ricardo, tell me a bit about your favourite Madeiran or Portuguese dessert. Wow, that's really wide. Let's say something like Madeira bold melon. So Ricardo, tell me a bit about your favourite Madeiran or Portuguese dessert. Wow, that's really wide. Let's say something like Madeira bold melon.
Next up is the Pixel 9 Pro.
So Ricardo, tell me a bit about your favourite Madeiran or Portuguese dessert. Wow, that's really wide. Let's say something like Madeira bold melon. So Ricardo, tell me a bit about your favourite Madeiran or Portuguese dessert. Wow, that's really wide. Let's say something like Madeira bold melon.
And last but not least, the Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra.
So Ricardo, tell me a bit about your favourite Madeiran or Portuguese dessert. Wow, that's really wide. Let's say something like Madeira bold melon. So Ricardo, tell me a bit about your favourite Madeiran or Portuguese dessert. Wow, that's really wide. Let's say something like Madeira bold melon.
So, what's our verdict on how these three phones handled the audio removal?
I'm going to go straight in there and say I think Samsung didn't do quite as well as I wanted them to do here. The artifacting that's left behind on the voice, especially if you go more extreme on the filters, it's just not pleasant to listen to. It's really scratchy and boxy. But I actually think, overhearing the iPhone test, that sounded a lot smoother, and especially as it's got the profile. So I'd be keen to hear what you think.
Yeah, so I think the Samsung is actually a victim of having too much customization, whereas Apple has profiles. So you have in-frame, studio, cinematic. So you have to make a choice. There isn't like an auto mode. So I think in the clip there I just used studio, which is kind of trying to recreate a studio environment. It automatically sets it to kind of 50, which leaves a little bit of the background noise in and then brings up the front sound. If you whack that lever kind of all the way up to 100, it is really impressive. Like, the C noise in the background almost disappears. But I probably would say don't do that, because even with the Samsung, it does the same thing. It makes it a bit robotic and you can hear the artificiality in the noise. But if you go to studio and hit it to about 70, I think the iPhone is really, really impressive.
Yeah? And Hamish, how did you find the Pixel?
The Pixel was basically kind of the same experience as you had with the Samsung, Josie. It was useful in the sense that it could pick out, okay, here are the different speakers in the scene, his noise, wind, and nature with the different sounds it could pick up. And there's an auto mode, so it will sort of automatically adjust that for you. You can definitely still hear the waves crashing, but then sort of it's not as loud as it was before. But then the audio of the people talking does have that sort of robotic, tones are definitely missing from what they're saying, and it just doesn't sound quite right. And so you can sort of tweak it a bit yourself. You can sort of get something where maybe people are talking a little bit more loudly and you can sort of get away with it, but the ideal situation would be just to kind of still make sure that your audio recording is good the first time. It feels very much like a backup rather than the thing you want to be relying on.
Yeah, whereas I think iPhone's, Apple's experience in audio has really helped it here, right? Like,
Sure.
It's worked a lot on not just identifying what the sound is, but also treating the sound that's left behind.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's called audio mix, right?
Yes.
It's not necessarily audio reduction or audio
erase
removal,
or-
exactly.
yeah,
So
yeah.
the aim is to mix the sounds in a way that sounds better, bringing sounds up, bringing sounds down, rather than eliminating a whole sound profile.
And I think sort of that approach of having that less is more, you can go into the settings if you really want to and do those more refined tweaks, but just being able to pick just various profiles seems very useful.
Next up, we're doing ChatGPT's itinerary, which sees us starting our day with a lush hike down to Rabbitjal Waterfall. And on our hike to the bottom, we made some time for some failed AI attempts.
Crocodile. Crocodile. Map.
Close encounters with nature, and so much walking. But eventually, we made it.
So we've made it to the waterfall. It's absolutely beautiful. The only problem is everyone else thinks so too. So we're going to use our smartphones to try object removal and see how well they do. Who do you think is going to do best?
iPhone. Google.
Samsung.
We took a similar shot with all three of our phones and made sure to get in a couple of tourists for us to remove. Unfortunately, said tourists made it pretty busy in real life, so we head back up and out of the valley onto our next location recommended by ChatGPT, the Aero de Cerrado viewpoint, where we're going to discuss our results.
What did you think of your phones? How did they do?
I think with Apple, look, let's be honest, it's probably the weakest feature of Apple Intelligence. It really just doesn't work super well. In some situations, when it identifies the people or the objects for you, it does work. I tried both versions of that technique, and it didn't really manage to effectively remove anything. I mean, it does remove them, but it leaves behind just a lot of blurring, and the pictures are kind of unusable. I think in a situation where you have one object you want to remove and kind of typical lighting conditions, it works okay, but in a big group, it's just really not up to task at the moment.
And what about you, Hamish?
So obviously, Magic Eraser is something that Google Pixel has had since, like, I think Pixel 6, and obviously now I'm on Pixel 9, so a few generations in, and it did a really good job. Going into the Photos app, it very quickly highlights most of the people you want to remove from the scene. People will see on screen there's quite a large group off to the right of my photo, and it managed to highlight quite a few of them. I then had to manually draw over a few bits of people, and it did a pretty good job at removing them. The first time around, I think it still left a very good quality image. As you started to remove more people from that group and it's having to fill in more of the background, there was some of that blurring, but as a way to tidy up a photo, remove a couple of people, it did a fantastic job.
A very similar story with Samsung, like a few bits of artifacting here or there. There was one, I used the S Pen, and I think that's a huge benefit of the S25 Ultra specifically, is when it comes to circling things and actually being able to edit in fine detail, it really helps. However, it didn't pick up a leg of someone I circled at one point, and the artifact it left behind was a spear-looking leg, which was a little bit alarming. But I was actually really impressed with the generative fill. I thought it did so well at figuring out how to make rock texture that looked good and convincing.
We did use a very challenging picture, I think, as well, both in terms of lighting and the number of people. So I think it's true of all of them that with really basic stuff, it's pretty good. But when you start to add more people and objects, I mean, the Samsung is quite clearly the best one, I think.
Yeah. Even the Google, it was good at taking the stuff out, but on some of that rock formation, it just struggled a little bit. And there was the odd leg it left floating as well that I had to highlight. But again, it didn't do any of this artifacting with the leg, it just sort of left a leg.
I think if you're wanting to take a phone like this somewhere and get those shots in those really crowded tourist spaces, it's a great way to get a better version of what's going to be a very crowded image otherwise. but it is still fundamentally not going to give you that complete blank canvas that you're maybe hoping for.
With time still left in the day, I tasked Axel and Hamish with 2 more AI challenges: to write messages home to our loved ones using AI, and to try and come up with some Instagram-worthy captions for our favourite vacation shots. Using Gemini Live, Hamish was able to craft a light-hearted message home and get a host of options for his Instagram captions. Meanwhile, on the iPhone 16 Pro, Axel used Writing Assist to help spruce up his message home, and then tried Apple's visual intelligence compared with ChatGPT for his Instagram caption. I, on the other hand, had a slightly harder time on Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, where I was desperately trying to find a Bixby tool to help me out. I was able to use Composer in the Messages app to help write up my text home, but I had to resort to Google's Gemini Live when it came to my Instagram caption. So, who did we think were the overall winners for day 3 of our trip?
So we've done our writing test. So I asked you to draft a message using writing assistive tools and also give a caption for an image. How is your guys' testing?
You know what? I'm happy to report Apple Intelligence was really, really good. It was
Let's go,
really
Apple.
good.
Let's
It was
go,
amazing.
Apple.
So impressed. And you have 3 options, so it's like friendly, concise, professional. So I did friendly a few times, and it actually did come up with something that was kind of usable. Like, they're always a little bit cringy, these things, but you can kind of press retry until you get something that you like. And then for the image caption, again, it uses ChatGPT, so you just go into your image gallery, hold down Siri and say, hey Siri, provide me a caption for this image. And it was really good. Yeah, it was really good. And because it's ChatGPT, you can ask it to try again. So I asked it to make it less cringy, because again, it was quite a cringy, like hashtag adventure awaits, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But the second one, again, was actually something that I might actually use. So finally, the iPhone has come through. Impressed.
There we go. Thank you, Tim Cook. And what about you, Hamish?
So for the message home, Gemini did a pretty good job. And then with the second attempt, I thought I would sort of give it not very much at first, then give it a little bit more info, and then asked it to rewrite it. And it did a pretty good job. So the first time, it sort of left space for me to include things I talked about, I wanted to tell my family about. Then I gave it some details about stuff I did, and it kind of just filled in those blanks for me. And then the final attempt, I said, okay, but can you rewrite that, make it a little bit more silly? And it's things like I'd mentioned I've been to a high up viewpoint. It said, oh, I'm having a great time, I've not fallen off, in brackets, yet, and all this other stuff. And I thought that was a really fun way to give some personality to it. And I think it did a pretty good job.
I think on Samsung's part, it was such a mixed bag, and we'll sort of talk more about this at some point, I think, but once again had the issue of not knowing which AI tool is the right one to use for this, and it not being immediately obvious, like right in front of your face, here's the tool, go use it. On the writing a message back home side of things, it was cool, but it gave me a word limit for one thing. 125 characters isn't really enough to sort of list through everything we did today. And because of that, I had to be very brief on things. So I said that we had food instead of we went for lunch at a restaurant. And it implied that we had taken snacks with us on the hike instead of we sat down for some food.
Because you're not able to give those details because of the character.
Exactly, exactly. But I did like, much like with yours, Axel, it had drop-down menus for different settings. So it had one for if this is social media, if this is just a message home, etc., and had another for tone, casual, polite, formal, whatever. That was all really cool, and it really came through in the message, which was quite fun, lighthearted. Not really how I would message necessarily, but it worked for what it was. The image caption, however, was not fun or easy for me. So I didn't really get what I wanted there. I did manage to use Gemini though, which still worked really well, much the same as everything you said. It gave me lots of different options. It gave me the opportunity to feedback and work on it. I thought that was really good. There was an option to make a social media piece of copy within the same app that I used for the message, except you can't upload an image to it. So that's not going to be much good.
Weird.
So it looks like Apple at least was the winner of this round, but it'll be interesting to see tomorrow in our next set of tests which phone comes out on top when we put all of the AI things we've used into one big scavenger hunt. We'll see you there.
That's right, past Josie. We're going to have a little fun with a game of hide and seek for our last day in Madeira, where we're putting our newfound AI skills to the test to learn more about the local culture and landmarks as recommended by ChatGPT, starting with a trip to the Monte Palace Gardens.
So we are starting our final full day in Madeira at the Monte Palace Tropical Garden. We're going to be playing a bit of hide and seek with our phones today.
I am going to use visual intelligence to see if it can find out where I am without my location turned on. So just the power of image and see if it can find out where I am.
And you, Hamish?
I kind of want to see if, because there's a lot of weird species of plant and bird here. I've seen a couple that aren't native to Madeira. So I'm going to try and see if Google Gemini can tell me what they are.
I'm quite interested. There's loads of like really cool textiles and designs around us. I really want to see if we can learn the history of some of those and where they originated from. It's going to be a jam-packed day. Let's crack on.
So I'm going to use visual intelligence here to see if it can tell me where I am. I've turned my location off, and actually this scene is quite Japanese in the architecture and the plants, so I'm going to see if it can tell that I'm still in Madeira. Where am I? This is the Monte Palace Tropical Garden in Funchal, Madeira. Apple, well done, they've done it, they've done it.
Do these look a little bit like red bluebells? So I'm kind of curious what they are actually. Can you tell me more about this plant, please? I'm going to turn it down because it's going quite in depth into telling me about the plants in general. But lower down, it explains that it's a type of fuchsia native to Bolivia. So you can find it in Peru, Argentina, and Ecuador. And obviously it's been brought here to this municipal garden.
I found this gorgeous tile artwork. I'd love to know a little bit more about its history, so I'm going to see if Samsung can figure it out. What is the art history of this tile work? So it's telling me this is the azulejos form of tin glazed ceramic tile work. It's a significant aspect of Portuguese and Spanish culture with a rich and long history, which is pretty accurate.
Armed with new knowledge about Madeira's rich native and inherited history, we took a brief break from our AI-powered learning to try out one of the world's 7 coolest commutes according to CNN, the Monte Toboggan ride. On the way down, I took the opportunity to challenge my Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra to find me using an obscure shot of my downhill journey. And powered by Gemini Live, the results were as fast as a Madeiran toboggan, which is actually pretty tame, so maybe a little faster. But there was no time to catch our breath at the bottom, because next up we're headed to try a different kind of Madeiran specialty. We're going to Blandy's Wine Lodge for a guided tour to learn more about the history and making of Madeira wine. But we want to see if AI can take things further by describing the taste, history, and crucially, where we can buy it.
So we've just had a wonderful tour of Blandy's Wine Lodge, learned a lot about how Madeira wine is produced and the history of it on the island. So we're now going to use AI to try and identify these wines, as well as what the flavour profile is, what they go well with, and any other history that AI thinks is interesting for us.
Sweetest and richest of the Madeira wine. It's 10-year-old, which would typically exhibit a complex and intense flavour profile, which is exactly what we were just told by our guides. A Google Gemini and finding this whole trip is very, very in-depth.
But it's super useful information, right?
I think that's done a pretty good job.
Cool. So obviously I have the option to use Gemini as well, but Samsung within the Bixby Vision app actually has its own wine identifying feature, and I'm really keen to see how it does with this wine. Yay, got it. 10 years old, Malmsey Madeira Rich. It tells you where it's from, the ranking in winery, the ranking worldwide, food pairings, sweet desserts, appetizers and snacks, and also some winemaker's notes. The palate is very well balanced with a viscous entry that lacquers the mouth. The acidity is well judged, lending the finish a sense of poise and tension that neatly counterbalances the richness and precocity.
So once again, I'm going to use visual intelligence, which is going to go straight to ChatGPT. So you can do two things with visual intelligence. You can go straight to Google. So if I take the picture and I can click search, hopefully it's going to give me places to buy the wine straight away. And it has done. So from Blandy's directly, from VINVM, which is a wine retailer, identify this wine and tell me what it pairs well with. And hopefully, so here we go. Blandy's 10-year-old Malmsey is a rich, sweet Madeira wine known for its complex caramelized flavors with notes of dried fruits, toffee, and a hint of spice. So again, it's identified the wine correctly. It's got it right. And I will shout out again the camera control button. I just pressed it and went straight into it, which is something that I found really useful in this whole trip.
We're going to try it now and see how well the label describes it. Let's have a go.
Cheers.
Oh, cheers. Yeah. All right.
Cheers first.
So for our final stop of the day, we're going to be heading to some souvenir shops to see if we can find some authentic Madeiran souvenirs to take home. Let's see if AI can help us. So I've been seeing these hats everywhere in Madeira, in particular with this really cool stripy motif on them. So I'm going to see if AI can tell me a little bit about the history of this textile.
The textile you are holding appears to be a traditionally woven bag.
Didn't quite get it right. It says this is a textile from Panama. Madeira is a melting pot, but from what I've been told, this is a very authentically Madeiran pattern, so no room for AI this time.
So I'm not looking for anything in particular, but I have spotted this stick-like thing and I don't know what it is, so I'm going to ask AI if it can help. What is this? This is a wooden carrinho, or powder fillet, a traditional Portuguese spice crusher commonly used in Madeira, often used to crush garlic, spices or herbs when preparing traditional dishes. I mean, I'd say it looks like a spice crusher. We'll have to check it out, but I think it's true.
So I'm going to use Google's Gemini tools to try and work out sort of what's going on in some of these ones here, which has got a house in which we've not seen on our vacation, but I want to find out a little bit more about it before I pick up this magnet. Okay, so it's telling me about the house. It's saying it's a traditional Madeiran house, specifically a type known as the Casa de Santana or Santana house. And it has a few distinctive characteristics like its shape, its bright colours, its thatched roofs, and its historical significance. Google Gemini continuing to provide an abundance of information to the one simple question that I asked it.
With our souvenirs in hand, we headed back home to put our heads together and come up with a final verdict. Which phone was the best travel companion? All right, guys, a busy day in Funchal today, but lovely to see the town and get a little bit more of the local culture. How did you find your experience using the phones today and this whole week to learn a bit more about Madeira?
I think a lot has been said about Apple Intelligence and not a lot of it good, but I have actually been pleasantly surprised. Apple Intelligence is very stylish, it's very seamless, and it's very easy to access, especially in comparison to what we've seen with the Samsung, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the functionality of some of the features is just very far behind, right? Like cleanup is kind of unusable in its current state. But visual intelligence, honestly, I've been so impressed with it. Like the ability to just press the camera control and instantly get ChatGPT up. And yes, you know, it's arguably sort of cheating. It isn't Apple's in-house software, but if it's available on an iPhone, you know, that's all we can go off. It's an iPhone feature.
Nice, yeah, and like you say, pick up on the UI side for Samsung. The AI tools are so impressive when you can find them. As someone who's typically an iPhone user, I definitely did really feel that learning curve that you get with not only changing to Android, not only then going to a Samsung version of Android, but also trying to toe that line between Samsung's AI tools and Google's AI tools. However, once I got the hang of it, I was really, really impressed. I think the camera tools in particular on Samsung are pretty much unmatched. The translation tool I thought was really, really good, really intuitive. Otherwise, the intuitiveness isn't quite there, especially with some of the Gemini tools. I think that's just not quite there yet, even for someone who'd had a lot more experience with it. Obviously, you've got quite similar functions to me. How did you find it?
I think Google Gemini and the sort of the Google experience itself kind of finds a space between the two. There is some confusion in that there are a few different ways to access different tools. I think for me, the Pixel 9 Pro is kind of the best of both. It has some of the sort of simplicity and UI of Apple in that it generally is fairly clean. It's easy to access everything. Google Gemini can be accessed through the power button. Google Lens is right there on a button that's always on your home screen. And there's apps like Google Translate, which again sounds a little bit like Samsung in that it's spread out, but it's very easy to access. For me, I think one of the better examples of AI from a simplicity and a functionality perspective in terms of that overall experience right now.
Kind of hard to come away from this and say which is the best AI phone to take with you on vacation, because as with all of these things, it depends on who you are and what you're used to. I think if you like Samsung phones and if you want great cameras and really solid AI tools, you don't mind that learning curve, Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra for me was excellent, and I'm really tempted to use it a bit more myself now, despite being an Apple user generally.
It's just hard to judge now because these software packages are improving literally every week. I mean, Apple's coming out with new features, we know. Gemini Live has been improved. Samsung will no doubt improve Galaxy AI at the next Unpacked event. So this all may change within 6 months' time.
Of course, there's one more question to answer on this epic journey. How well did AI plan our vacation?
So I think the big question was, could it give us an itinerary, a list of things to do that catered to 3 kind of different taste profiles? But I think some of the things I've enjoyed the most are things that I wouldn't have chosen myself. So the hike and the wine tasting specifically. I probably wouldn't have done those things if I came on my own. And I'm glad that it surfaced those things for me and we all did it as a group. It was really fun.
For me in the future, I'd probably use it as a good starting point, trying to get a few ideas, particularly, trying to narrow down a general place to visit. So I don't think any of us would have picked Madeira. I think it would have been quite easy for us to go for somewhere maybe a little bit more well-known or just something we've maybe a bit more familiar with. And also on the ground, using tools like Google Lens and Translate just to be able to converse with people and identify things as I go.
I think one of the things that was really important to us when we were planning this whole thing is that while there's like a wealth of knowledge on TechRadar and a lot of other sites on how to use AI to the max, we wanted to try and show that anyone can do the kind of stuff we're doing. Now, it does still have its pitfalls that you've both highlighted already, and one of those is, especially for somewhere like Madeira, which isn't a very digital place, there's not lots of reviews of stuff, there's not lots of online information about restaurants, about local culture. It isn't going to be able to give you the same wealth of information. We already know that there's going to be some improvements to Google services coming up in the next wave of updates to Gemini, but the Gemini travel agent tool is going to really, really help empower these things moving forwards and be a bit more agentic with actually booking flights for you. That's not an option
action we took because we are filming, but you can already do that at home now, and I think that's a really great way to sort of just tick off some of those annoying parts of holiday planning. And like we say, get the foundations there and then roll with it, look at the local knowledge, perhaps speak with a travel agent in person just to make sure those are all on point, and then go and enjoy your vacation, basically.
And we certainly enjoyed ours.
We want to give a huge thank you to our sponsor for this trip, Norton, and a big thank you to Hamish and Axel for joining us as well. If you want to find out more information about our sponsor, check the link in the description below, where you'll also find plenty of links for all of the products we've been testing while we've been out in Madeira. And if you've got suggestions for what you want to see AI plan for us next, let us know in the comments. We'll see you next time. Bye!
Bye.